The Multimedia Library at Sendai, built by Toyo in 2001. Sendai. Population 1 million, 300 kilometers north of Tokyo. In the early 90s, the mayor was accused of accepting bribes from the building sector. The newly elected mayor, who wanted to show exemplary proof of transparency in decision-making, launched a project for a multimedia library, an establishment hitherto unknown in Japan. It fulfills several functions. There is a library, a place to consult or borrow DVDs, exhibition galleries, and free access to the internet. The citizens' associations consulted about this complex program insisted that access should be free and without barriers. The competition winner was Toyo, 54 years old. He is known for his light and random architecture, the Odato Dome, a U-shaped house, a museum at Yatsushiro. His proposal is transparent. The image of the building took shape right from the earlier sketches. Behind a glass facade, strange white tubular structures can be seen rising all the way up the media library, right to the top. It all started with the image of something floating in an aquarium. It's true that I spoke about seaweed, but that was to give an image of space that I wanted to make here, an extremely fluid space. One that, like water flowing, would constantly flow with air and light. In order to do that in 3 dimensions, to build that, I thought of using very organic structures as posts, that I called tubes, that are the composite bodies intended to hold up 7 floors. The tubes are spread throughout the building. There are 13 in all. The 4 largest take up the 4 corners. 9 others are completely randomly placed. They have different diameters. They lean different ways. Their design differs, but they all have the same white tubular openwork structure that can be seen through. The largest of the tubes houses the vertical traffic flow, the passenger and goods lifts, and the stairs. All that is fluid flows through them, water and air, and also views and light. Seen from the sub-basement, the effect is vertiginous. The tubes seem to increase the sense of disproportion. They are twisted and lean as if wrought by a giant hand. The steel's tube structure, welded to story after story, ensures the vertical and horizontal stability of the building and sustains the weight of the platforms, the 80-centimetre thick plates. In spite of their delicate appearance, they are designed to stand up to earthquakes as violent as the one in Kobe in 1995. When dealing with load-bearing structures, the Bible for modern architecture relies on posts and beams with the floor above. In the Sendai Multimedia Library, they talk of tubes and platforms. The load distribution is different. There are no beams. The platform is made from a plate with vertical buttresses, a honeycomb structure welded to another plate. A thin metal sandwich such as is currently used in naval construction. Tubes and platforms make the multimedia library seem like a huge Meccano set in which the building requirements comply with Toyo Ito's graphic desires. The slimness of the platforms continues the image of the tubes that are themselves transparent. Only the ceiling of the ground floor shows traces of metalwork. On the roof, a metallic grille recalling the structure of the floors tops the 13 tubes that stick out above the building and mark the upper limits of the space. The Multimedia Library is a cube built in the town centre in a heterogeneous urban environment. The medium-sized building takes up the whole area of the 50 by 50 metre parcel. Each of the 4 sides is different. The southern wall is made of glass. To the west, the wall with the emergency exits is uniformly clad. For the eastern and northern walls, each story has a different finish. Transparent glass, polycarbonate, sand-blasted glass, aluminium cladding, and, for the first 2 floors, transparent glass once again. Facing the trees, it is one big window. The double glazing of the facade keeps in the heat, and the reflections multiply the effects of the play of light. Sporting fine engravings on sand-blasted glass, the large glass plate of the exterior wall acts as a brise-soleil. It extends beyond the building as if its size has been maladjusted and increases the ephemeral and floating effects. I said earlier that architecture expresses an extremely artificial order. So as to eliminate that order, I wanted the 7 levels to be simply piled one on top of the other in any desired order. Going to the extreme, or putting it in another way, it's as if 7 buildings were put together. I wanted to establish a relationship between them that was totally egalitarian, free. That is what I wanted right from the first sketch plans. I wanted to make a media convenience store. Ground floor, reception, cafe, shop. First floor, Children's library, periodicals, internet, administration. Second and third floors, reference library, lending library, reading room. Fourth floor, exhibition gallery for the citizens of Sendai, currently displaying the first 100 years of the school for young ladies. Fifth floor, exhibition gallery displaying plastic arts from Miyagi province. Sixth floor, cinema, meeting rooms, administration, viewing and lending library of cassettes and DVDs. The ground floor, a 7-meter high glazed area. Access is from all sides. This is for general traffic and a meeting place. They are in the building, but can enjoy the city as if they were in the street. This is a public place. In fine weather, the feeling of being in an outside square becomes reality. Facing the trees along Yonzengi Avenue, the facade articulated in 8 large panels can completely withdraw into itself. The line between the street area and the ground floor of the building blurs, making it difficult to distinguish the outside from the inside. The architecture fades away. The architect went against current Japanese usage that prefers all important buildings to be set back so as to create new public areas. He favoured this new space inside the multimedia library and obtained a prolongation of opening hours. The ground floor is open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. The setting back was exchanged for time. No doubt the way that Westerners think of space is different from the way we see it. I have often thought about that. When we speak about space, maybe we mean only the perception that we Japanese have of the Western notion of space. We have the impression that for them it means what has been hollowed out of a rock, while for us it means emptiness, vacuity. It is what exists between 2 columns, the void in which multiply relationships can be engendered. It's an empty space, vacuum, nothingness. Let us take an example. I speak to you. Between the word I have just spoken and the word I'm about to speak, there is nothing, a blank space. I'm interested in that blank space. I find that blank space very important. First floor. Like all the others, a square, 50 meters by 50 meters. The floor plan here has been altered several times at the request of the users, while the work was still in progress. There is a simple reason for all these alterations. This is the floor where the juxtaposition of its functions, administration, the children's library, and the room for the internet, is the most important. Considering the complexity, it is surprising to find an almost total absence of walls. The various programs coexist, so anyone can go where curiosity leads. The only lighting for the whole floor is the rectilinear series of neon fittings. It is a furnishing that makes the plan, the curves of a half wall for the children's library, the alignment of the shelves of magazines to be consulted, the 3-leaf clover-shaped forms for sitting and waiting or reading. The raised yellow lines on the floor help those with limited sight to find their way. Everything is simple. And as the public and the private administrative areas have to be kept separate, the architect has installed a wall unlike the others, a translucent partition that floats, a curtain. The use of the curtain makes the different areas of the first floor more comprehensible, defining a corridor or a place for reading. I think that rectilinear walls are very artificial barriers. Now you have much more freedom in natural surroundings. When you're walking, you're at liberty to choose between various possibilities. You make your own path. If there are 100 people, there are 100 paths. Personally, that pleases me and gives me an impression of freedom. It's the same with architecture. These 100 different people have to be able to find their 100 different paths and trust their animal instincts to help them find what they're looking for. Then they can give instinct its head and find pleasure in just wandering. In the interests of freedom, it's best not to make rectilinear walls. In the multimedia library, the walls, those real walls that go from floor to ceiling and don't move, are very hard to find. Only one floor has rectangular rooms in a regular alignment, the fourth floor, that houses the Sendai Citizens Exhibition Gallery. Permanent walls cut maintenance and staff costs to the minimum. Here it is the citizens themselves who install and dismantle short-term exhibitions. They hire the walls for a mere trifle, an exhibition hall for everyone to use, and the architecture demurs to community action. On the other hand, the floor above is a dream come true for any exhibition curator. A new layout and a new path can be created for each new collection. The plan is ephemeral. It lasts no longer than the duration of the exhibition and can be changed in a trice with fingertip control. This follows the long-lasting Japanese tradition of sliding walls that can retract to make a living room into a dining room or bring the outside in. A surprise awaits on the 6th floor. A continuous large wall surrounds a central zone. Closed in behind the wall are the administrative offices, 2 conference rooms and a cinema. Rather than a wall, this is a membrane, translucent and curved, like the semi-permeable membrane of a cell. It is an imitation of organic nature, an impression strengthened by being green and by the curves of the furniture and the circular screens of the seats for watching DVDs. Between this translucent wall and the immaterial wall of glass giving onto the city, the architect has created a floating zone, a large ambulatory where one can stop to watch a film, work, or benefit from the vision of nightfall. Of course, there are dedicated areas, like the library with its rows of shelves, the cinema for films, or the exhibition gallery. But I wanted to emphasize the blank spaces, the areas without signs. In the usual language of architecture, that means corridors, foyers, or lobbies. I attribute the maximum number of functions to these indefinite spaces, leaving room for future uses that nobody thought about when the place was being built. It is in the library, where the functional equipment weighs the most, that it is easy to see that the tubes are not just for load-bearing. Like trees in a forest glade, they structure the scene in this artificial nature. They polarize the space, creating places in the middle of the shelving or wide circular areas for reading. These are the supports that allow people and furniture to redefine the space. After his considerations of lightness and fluidity, Toyo Ito asks himself what architecture can do for those whose address is electronic, or whose connections are by a network, the virtual inhabitants of invisible cities. How can these virtual places be integrated with the actual buildings that house us? Breaking with the claims of modern architecture in the 20th century, the Multimedia Library at Sendai and its Space Without Barriers is a first step on the way to this immaterial and evanescent architecture that leaves plenty of room for the ephemeral.